Oh, we love our graduates. We love our students. It's so hard for me not to get emotional when these go on. And yes, I will definitely cry, Alicia, that when my kids graduate, I am already a mess when I think. I couldn't even get through the first quarter of that video knowing what was coming. I had to actually leave for a minute and wait. I was like, ah! So yes, it's gonna be hard, but it's good. It's a good thing. It's a privilege that we get to invest in lives of people, that we get to shape one another and pour into the generations to come. This is our legacy. This is our legacy as a church. And each of our milestones that we celebrate here, that we just did, are built around core values that we have as a church. For the graduation milestone, the core value is the value of discipleship and the value of sending. We want to be a church that raises disciples that we send in the world, disciples who make disciples. Now, when you think of a healthy church, what comes to mind? Just in a moment, just in your back of your mind. What does it mean to be a healthy church? Marine's a church I want to be at, or that's a church I'd like to be a part of. What are the markers of a healthy church? I mean, sure, engaging biblical preaching is a must. Vertical worship that gives glory and honor to Jesus is a must. Fellowship, where together we can be honest and authentic and real with one another. We can look out for one another and carry one another's burdens. But I think a litmus test that we could use to determine whether or not we're a healthy church, a thriving church, is to ask ourselves the question, are people coming to know Jesus as a result of us existing? Are people coming to know Jesus because Moraine Valley Church is seated here in Moraine and Palos Heights, Illinois, in the United States of America? And also, as we gather and talk, and as we send, as we engage with one another, are people becoming more like Jesus as a result? Are people getting to know him, and are they becoming like him? I think is an important thing. And this is discipleship. And discipleship is so important to Jesus. I think we use these words, and I don't know about you, but I get familiar sometimes with church Christianity, church-ese, and I hear discipleship and it goes in one category, and I just kind of move on. But discipleship is so important to Jesus. If we're going to be a church that's really treasuring Jesus and going after him, we need to know that Jesus treasures discipleship. One of the last things he told his disciples before leaving was, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, teaching them to obey everything I commanded, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And surely I'll be with you to the very end of the age." We want to know where Jesus is with us. It's in the process of fulfilling the Great Commission of making disciples. For us as a church, it's not just about church services. They're great. It's not just about worship. It's great. But as a church, I would love us to be a church that's known for helping people know Jesus and helping them become like him in discipleship. For the few minutes that we have left together, I would like to explore a little bit what those two questions look like. Are we doing those things? And I'm kind of a visual person, so I like to think visually, and so I've got some easels behind me, and so hopefully you could bear with me. But it helps me kind of categorize some things. And so we're going to look at 4 boats and 4 invitations. Can you do that with me this morning? You ready to jump in? Each of these boats are moments and snapshots in the life of Jesus with Peter. If you look throughout the Gospels, there's lots of water, there's lots of boats, there's lots of moments where they're in water. I mean, Sea of Galilee was in the area, there are the Galileans. A lot of Jesus' followers were fishermen, so it makes sense that they'd be there. But there are these crucial moments in Peter's life that I think give us a window into what it looks like to be in discipleship for the long haul. Because discipleship isn't something that just happens when we say, I've decided to follow Jesus. That's a start. But then what does it look like for the long road ahead? What does it look like to walk alongside the life of an individual through their ups and through their downs as they live life? And we invite them into discipleship, into becoming like Jesus. Now, again, I don't know about you, but I can relate a lot to Peter's life and stories. Some of us are familiar with who he is. But Peter's life isn't the glorified version of a perfect disciple that we often think of. If anything, he gets kind of an unflattering view in the Gospels. Think about it. He's often out blurting out the wrong answer, and Jesus is correcting him. He's making promises that he knows he cannot keep. He misunderstands often what Jesus is really about and gets it wrong multiple times and is corrected. He struggles with power and with status, and even at one time, he denied knowing Jesus at the time that it mattered most. It's not really the most flattering picture of what discipleship would be, but yet I'm so glad that the Gospels didn't edit these things out, because God wasn't finished with Peter yet, and he was part of leading the movement of the church in such crucial ways. It would have been easy to take these moments out because, well, that doesn't make me look good. But I'm so glad that they are in the writings because they give us a picture for you and I what it looks like to walk with Jesus and invite others to do the same. And so we're going to find 4 moments in Jesus' life where he's at a boat. And so I'm going to draw this up here. So we got boat number 1. That's why I went to art school, guys. Yeah. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for helping me pay for my college education. That's what I could do. We have boat number 1 where Peter is, right? And the first invitation that we find with Peter is the invitation to follow. You can find it in Matthew chapter 4 if you want to go there. It'll also be on the screen with you. We're going to jump around a few texts, but we're going to read these narratives and just sort of settle for a few minutes at each moment. But the first boat that we find Peter at is also the boat where the invitation to follow happens. And in Matthew chapter 4, verse 18 through 21, we find this crazy moment where Jesus interrupts the flow of Peter's life. But before we read the text, I want to ask you a question. Would you say yes to the following question? Pete, do you have the video?
And take your chances?
So you're in the airport. You're about to go to the destination that you've been planning on. You have a life plan in this moment in your life, and someone brings a sign up to you and says, if you push this button, it will give you a different destination than you were planning on going. But in order to do it, you've got to drop everything and go. Would you do it? Now, this is a real scenario. This is part of an advertisement for a campaign for a company. And so the question is, would you go? So turn to the person next to you and just determine how many people would go in that moment or not go. Now, don't over-spiritualize it. I mean, just imagine you're in O'Hare Airport, and someone walks up to you and says, hey, you're flying over to Toledo. I'm going to tell you somewhere else, so talk to somebody. All right, just by show of hands, how many of you, now again, just being honest, this is a real scenario now. How many of you go? We have a lot of adventure seekers in here. To be honest, I don't know if I would. I like the idea of going, but I've got family and other people, and I just call them up and say, hey, honey, I'm not coming to the wedding because well, you see, there's this sign, and so... Yeah, so you said you would go. That's awesome. How many raise your hands who would not go? Who would not go? Yeah, the practical ones in hands. It's risky to take something. Someone offers you a different path. We have different plans in a real way. This is kind of a picture, in some ways, of what discipleship looks like. We have our plans in life. Whether it's from just watching TV or being in this world or growing up in a home, we create a value system that starts to drive us and direct us. It starts to tell us where we want to go. We start to make plans. Our graduates are going off to school. Some are staying local. Some have jobs. We have pictures of the kind of world that we want. Now, this isn't a bad thing by any means. But oftentimes, Jesus isn't so concerned about our plans. He's more concerned about his. And sometimes his call to follow him interrupts those plans. And we find that moment in Matthew chapter 4. It says, and Jesus, walking beside the Sea of Galilee, saw 2 brothers, Simon called Peter, there's Peter again, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. And at once they set their nets down and followed him. Can you imagine being there as Jesus said, come follow me, and then you just drop your nets and go? This is one of those stories as kind of a teenager, kind of reading the scriptures for the first time. I was like, really? Are they robots? they're out in the boat, they're working with their dad, and Jesus comes and he just says, hey, come follow me, guys. Like, now I don't know, I mean, the first read I was kind of like, it's kind of presumptuous of Jesus, isn't it? I mean, it's maybe a little bit like rude almost, like, hey, I know you're busy, guys, but why don't you drop what you're doing? I'm going somewhere else. Come follow me. And the crazy thing is they actually did. Can you imagine their poor dads? They're like out there like, guys? And they're just wading through the water in their togas trying to get back to the shore. Where are you guys going? Who is that man? What is he doing? You're just leaving. It's nuts. It's insane. But Jesus' call to follow him is a dangerous call. It interrupts our life. It interrupts our life, our flow, where we want to go. And to understand a little bit more about that invitation to discipleship, we need to know a little bit more about rabbis of those days. I mean, rabbis in a lot of ways were the educational institutions of the day. They were the Harvards, they were the Princetons, they were the Yales, they were the highly competitive elite school that only a few people got selected in. And you didn't have rabbis come ask you to follow them. You would apply to rabbis. They would test you, they would quiz you, they would find out your knowledge of Scripture. Because a rabbi, it was very important to them that you would be able to do and carry on what the rabbi would do. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, Harvard isn't just going to accept anybody because when you graduate from Harvard, you graduate with the Harvard name. They want to know that you can do what Harvard can do. They want to know that you can represent Harvard well when you leave. Same is true for the rabbis. If you're going to learn and be like me and follow me, I want you to know that you can't just know what I teach you, but I want you to know that when you're leaving, that you represent me, that you look like me, that you can act like me, that when they say that who's your rabbi and that you point to me, that it's a fair representation of who I am. And so rabbis were highly selective at who they chose. And then comes along Jesus, and he finds these fishermen at their father's trade. Chances are they didn't make the cut. Chances are they either didn't have the ambition or the drive or whatever, but they decided not to go on to the elite school of the rabbis. And Jesus comes to these fishermen and says, hey, you, come follow me. This was totally backwards for a rabbi of those times. Totally backwards. Totally backwards. That Jesus came and looked and selected them. But he didn't select the elite. He didn't quiz them. He didn't test them. He just looked at them and said, follow me. And that was the prestigious acceptance letter of a rabbi. That phrase, come follow me, to a Jew of those days would have read it and said, wow, that's the acceptance letter of a rabbi. Come follow me. And so when he calls those disciples, he says, you're in. You're a part of it. You're part of the elite with me, and I want you to come and do what I can do. It also means that Jesus believes that these disciples could somehow carry on Jesus' work in the world. And discipleship starts with that invitation to come follow me. I mean, for some of us in this church, we believed in Jesus for a long time. Some of us have believed in for decades and beyond. And sometimes it's easy to forget those moments where he said, come, follow me. We believe in him, but are we letting him interrupt our lives and letting him call to follow me? I mean, there was no amazing church service. There was no sales pitch when Jesus said this. He simply said, come, follow me. And it's a call to drop what we're doing, to drop our agenda and say, Jesus, your agenda is going to rule my life. The invitation to discipleship is not just to say, I believe you're the Son of God and I believe that you died and rose from the cross. That's the starting point, right? But the following up with that is that the ability to say, Jesus, you're my Lord. I'm going to go where you lead me. And if we're going to be a church, we need to stop about discipleship. We need to start with that word follow. Are we first following Jesus? Have you answered that call? I mean, maybe you haven't been to church for a while and this is your first time back. The good news is that Jesus doesn't wait for you to get your act together. He doesn't wait for you to be cleaned and polished. He doesn't wait for you to look like the religious elite. But he simply looks at you and says, you can be who I want you to be if you just start by following me. And to walk with a rabbi was not like going to class, because anyone could listen to a rabbi's teachings. They taught in lots of different places. But to be a disciple meant that you followed them, that you mimicked them, that you modeled your life after them. You watched how they ate, how they prayed, how they talked, how they loved, how they forgive, how they understood the scriptures. You look at all those things and you said, I want that person's life to be my life. And so the invitation to follow Jesus starts with us saying, I want my life, Jesus, to look like yours, and I'm willing to go where you go. And the second thing is we're going to be a church that makes disciples. We need to be willing to invite other people to come follow us. In Corinthians 4, verse 16, Paul is talking to a group of Gentiles who likely never met Jesus at all. And he's trying to explain to them what this life with Jesus looks like. He's trying to explain to them, how do you do this? How does this work? Who Jesus is? And so he tells them, if you want to know what living with Jesus looks like, I urge you to imitate me. as a church, we have an amazing responsibility to say, come follow me, look at my life. Do you know what Jesus looks like? Sure, maybe you don't. But come into my family, come into my home. Watch how I'm a husband, watch how I'm a wife. Watch how I love my kids. Watch how I share. Watch how I pray when there's hard times. So many of us commit our lives to Christ, but then we don't get connected with other people. And so hard times come, and we don't know what it looks like to be a Jesus follower in all the various moments of life. But we do because we're walking in it. Have you invited someone to follow you and to look at your life and to pattern their lives after you? Maybe the more challenging and more kind of convicting question is, if they were to follow your life, would they begin patterning Jesus? Will they begin patterning Jesus with your life? So the first invitation is to follow. Come follow me. To invite people alongside of us. And can we continue to be a church to do that? And the great thing is, you could have just decided to follow Jesus. I'm so proud of some of our students who are new believers, and it's so amazing. They get so excited about Jesus, they just invite some friends. They're like, hey, I don't know what's going on. It's kind of cool. Bring your friends. Come check this thing out. Right there, they've invited someone to follow their example of getting excited about Jesus. It doesn't matter what level you're in to be someone who can disciple someone. Just share the Jesus that you already know with somebody else. Don't share the Jesus you don't know because you don't know that yet, right? So just share what you already know with somebody else, as simple as that. So we want to be a church that invites people to follow. And the second boat, these get better, guys. These get better. Whew. Second boat is focus. Something my wife tells me to do constantly. Because I need it. I need focus. Second boat is focus. Because if you're like me in this room, I don't know about you, but there are times where I'm like, this idea of following Jesus, I can understand that. Like, yeah, cool, I did that. It's awesome. And everything's really cool. Or we take our students to camp, and the cool thing about investing in students' lives is that God invested in you too. So I'll come back on the camp high, we call it. Like, it's just, you just get super excited. You're like, yeah, Jesus is awesome, mountaintop experience. Everything's great. God's doing everything right in the world. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I have to pay my bills. Oh, wait, I've got a mortgage to take care of. And oh, wait, I've got that health issue. And oh, that's right, that problem with our family is still going on. It's not over yet. And so all these pulls happen on our lives. Can you relate? So we're excited about following Jesus, but then life kind of gets in the way. We're like, it doesn't mean that we're not a believer, but we're trying to follow Jesus. And we find this other moment where Peter is on a boat. It's in Luke chapter 5, and it starts with verse 1. But I think it's pretty interesting because Peter was already called to follow Jesus in a very different way in Matthew, and now we see him in Luke. It says, on one day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. And he saw at the water's edge 2 boats. They were left by the fishermen who were washing their nets. And he got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and he asked him to put him a little out from shore. And then he sat down and he taught people from the boat. These are very different details that we get in this story. Was Peter called twice? Was he not? When harmonizing the Gospels, most scholars believe that there's probably 2 opportunities that Peter was called. And so chronologically, if you follow it, there was a moment where Jesus, the rabbi, the rock star, the educational institution, the one who had the name and the title behind him, said, hey, you can do what I can do. I could be like a rabbi? Sweet. I'm going. I'm in. This is exciting. I want a better life. I want things to be better. And sometimes as believers, like, Jesus, you'll heal me. You'll forgive me. You'll give me a new start. Sweet. Sign me up. I just said sweet in church. I hope that's okay. But we get so excited, like, sign me up. Like, I want that for my life. And we get really excited, and the mountaintop experience comes, but then life gets in the way, and we realize there's lots of decisions. Very good chance that Peter was doing the very same thing. You follow me, I'll follow you, but life gets difficult. I've got bills to pay. And so where do we find Peter again? Back at the water's edge. And I think it's interesting. I could just imagine Peter being like, Jesus being like, I'm not done with Peter yet. I want him here. I want him on my team. And so I'm just going to have this crowd follow me, and I'm going to teach them. And I'm at the water's edge. I'm like, well, how funny would it have that I'm going to stand on Peter's boat and say, hey, Peter, can you push me out to shore? And we don't understand, we don't see what Jesus taught, because the call of this wasn't about what Jesus taught. This was about Jesus getting Peter's attention and saying, focus. Listen to what I'm about. And then they have this great catch of fish. And in verse 8, we pick it up, and it says, Peter saw this, and he fell at Jesus' knees, and he said, go away from me, Lord, because I'm a sinful man. For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. And they said to Simon, then Jesus said to Simon, don't be afraid. So from now on, you will fish for people. And they pulled up their boats to shore. And again, not to say again, but they left everything and followed him. As a church, it's easy for us to start going into the routine. Faith can feel rote. It can feel like discipleship is just something we do. I go to church and I just kind of go on autopilot. These aren't bad things. These are good rhythms to be a part of. But I think sometimes we can let life get in the way from really hearing what God's inviting us to, which is his commission, his purpose, to be fishers of men, to engage the world in the way that he wants us to engage it, to really know him and walk with him. And so with one another, we need to have conversations, and intentionally, if we're going to be a church that disciples, is to say, hey, how's your life going? How's your focus? Is it on Jesus? I mean, we're doing the church stuff, but is it on Jesus? Are you walking where he wants you to walk? Have you been hearing from him? Is he encountering your heart? Is he encountering your soul? Would you take a moment and focus? And for us this morning, it's an invitation just to say, Jesus, I'm here at church, but my heart, my focus, I don't know if it really is on you. And the crazy thing is that when Jesus interrupts our lives again, he says, it hasn't changed. My purpose for you hasn't changed. I haven't given up on you. I want you to come and be a part of my mission of discipleship and being fishers of men. And that leads us to our third boat. I think you guys kind of know where this is going. But then you didn't. There's windows on that one. And this one, we're going to call faith. Following Jesus takes faith, and faith takes risk. Hebrews tells us that faith is a certainty of things unseen. We have a certainty in our heart that they're there, and maybe we can believe in our mind. And for me, I can have faith in the things about Jesus that make sense. Jesus is the Son of God. I can have faith in that. I can have faith in knowing that he died for my sins and he rose again. I can have faith in that, and I can believe that, and I can make that an anchor for my soul. But when Jesus asks me to step out into the unknown and I don't know what the results are going to be, I like to calculate what's going to happen before I do it. And sometimes Jesus isn't so concerned about us calculating the risk. He just involves faith and asks us to step out. This moment happens in Matthew chapter 14. So put yourselves there real quickly. And also, safety and neatly ordered life is something that you want. Being a disciple may not be for you. If having a neat and orderly life where everything is predictable and everything comes together in life, everything okay, then discipleship may not be for you. Because discipleship involves faith. It involves risk. We see this in Matthew 14 where Peter again is on a boat, and immediately it says Jesus made the disciples get onto a boat and go ahead of them to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went up to the mountainside for himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance off land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When Jesus' disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." I don't know if that would have helped if I was in that moment. I'm in the water, the waves are crashing, and I see this thing I think is a ghost, maybe a person who says, "Don't worry, it's just Jesus." Oh, okay, that's right, you're walking on it. You're walking on water! How am I supposed to respond to that? But anyways, he's like, so Lord, sorry, I got loud there. "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied. This is what's amazing me about Peter. Kind of always stepping first. "Lord, if you're my rabbi and I'm your disciple and you're walking on water, that means you think I can walk on water, right? So, Lord, if you call me and you tell me to come to walk on the water," he said, "do it." And then Jesus said, "Come." Then Peter got out of the boat and he walked on water and he came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind and he was afraid and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," he said. "Why did you doubt?" And he climbed into the boat and the wind died down, and those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." And as a church, we experience Jesus when we step out in faith. We get to see Jesus truly is who he said he is when we step out and trust that he really can do what he said he could do through us. And as a church, we're invited to take steps of faith and risk, encouraging one another not to always take the safe route, but to ask ourselves, is Jesus calling us to deeper waters? And as a church, as we interact with one another, are we inviting other people to deeper waters? I love this famous quote from C.S. Lewis about safety and God, and it comes from the Chronicles of Narnia. And he says, Aslan is a lion. He is the lion, the great lion. Ooh, said Susan. I thought he was safe. I thought he was a man. Is he quite safe? I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion. Safe, said Mr. Beaver. Who said anything about safe? Of course, he is not safe, but he's good. And he's the king, I tell you. Safety isn't the ultimate goal of being a Christian. Having everything neatly tight in a bow isn't always the ultimate goal of a Christian. But we need to encourage each other to deeper waters in our faith. And when we do, when we step out in faith, we could be like the disciples in the boat and say, surely you really are the Son of God. You really can do what you said you can do. You really are who you said you are. And just as an encouragement, one of the ways we've been doing this in our students is encouraging them to share their faith with their friends. What a better way to take a step and a risk than to go in front of someone you love and say, hey, can I tell you about this thing I do called church? And can I tell you about this person that it's all about called Jesus? Can I tell you about him? Oh, here we go again. And you just know where it's going to come. You feel the judgment, you feel the questions, you feel the concern, and you start to try to navigate all that stuff. The waters feel unsafe in those moments. But I want to encourage us as a church that that's probably one of the greatest places that we can live the adventure of a Christian life is by telling other people about Jesus. Our students and our ministries partnered with a group called Illinois School Project. And we've hosted rallies in the area. We've been a part of sharing the gospel on high school campuses during lunch hours and after school. And you'd think that maybe only a few people would come to these things. You'd think that only a few people would come. But these clubs are being led by a handful of students. This isn't the majority of the students leading these clubs. And yet this year, we've seen 120 rallies hosted in 37 schools in the high school in the Illinois area. 120, yeah. And together through students, there's been 981 gospel presentations made by personal witnessing. The students have actually gone out and shared just by personal witnessing. 638 students have indicated that they've put faith in Christ for the first time. And over 8,700 students have been in the rally attendance in our area. There is a world that is ready to hear the gospel. They may not all respond, but there's an opportunity in front of all of us. But those waters look scary and they look deep and we often don't go. One of the challenges we did with our students as well, just in the Revolution, was to say for the next 8 weeks before our semester's out, can we just challenge you guys to have 1,000 conversations about Jesus? And I was nervous because as a youth pastor, I'm like, oh, this board is going to not fill up. We had 1,000, 1000. We had green stickers representing a conversation that students would have. Some of this through the rally, some of this through personal conversation. And I was thinking, man, at the end, we're like maybe 300 short. I'm not sure we're going to get there. But just the last hour, just a couple days after Revolution was done, we got the report that we had 1,034 conversations about Jesus this year. That's incredible. But it only happens when we take risks and we take steps of faith. And the students that have done this have walked back and saying, I did it. And they actually responded. They texted me and they asked me more questions. I couldn't believe it. And they in their own hearts are growing with joy and faith and saying, truly you are the Son of God because we stepped out. And this leads us to our last boat. Got to mix it up. Put a little banister there. Put some sail on that one. The last invitation and the last boat for us as a church is the word forgive. Because in Peter's life, he was invited to follow him. And he left everything and he followed. Things got difficult. And he went back to his family trade and he lost focus. But he was invited again by Jesus to focus. And then Peter was doing amazing things with the disciples. They were casting out demons and preaching the gospel in the kingdom of the world, kingdom of God to the nations. And they were talking, great things were happening. And he even walked on water. But when life was at its hardest and things looked at darkest, Jesus was arrested. He was tried with a sham trial. And he was put on a cross. And just before that, he told Jesus, I would never forsake you. I would never deny you. I would kill for you. I would die for you. And Jesus said, careful what you say, because shortly, before the rooster crows 3 times, you're going to deny me. Before the rooster crows, you will deny me for 3 times. And Peter, full of hopes and full of ambitions and everything that Peter thought he was doing, maybe Peter thought he was on a good track, and at the very last moment, a curveball threw his way, and he fell. And he denied Jesus at an hour where it mattered most. But as the Gospels would have it, as God would have it, Peter would be on a boat one last time, because Jesus still wasn't done with him. And after he had resurrected again, we find Peter again at the boat, this time doing his trade again, fishing. Maybe because he's just given up. Maybe he didn't know what to do. He doesn't know what his next orders are. And so he's at a boat with his disciples. And we find in John 21 this story. Afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. And it happened this way. Simon Peter and Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. They said, we'll go with you. What else are we going to do, right? So they went out in the boat, and that night caught nothing. And early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not recognize it was Jesus. This is a beautiful picture. And he called out to them, friends, have you caught any fish? Can you imagine this reunion? No, they answered. He said, why don't you try throwing your nets on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. And when they did, they were unable to haul in the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, being John, said to Peter, it's the Lord. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and he jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish. They were not far from shore, about 100 yards, and when they landed, they saw burning coals where there were fish on it with some bread. What a beautiful picture. Even after you denied me, even after where you felt like you kind of cut me off, Jesus wasn't done with Peter yet. And I just love this creative way that Jesus invites him to come back again. And man, did Peter run and take that opportunity. Didn't even wait. Threw on his clothes and just jumped into the water. 100 yards, that's a long way to swim if you haven't swam. Man, what a picture. And afterwards, Jesus reinstates Peter. He reinstates Peter, and he says, this in verse 15. When they'd finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know I love you. And Jesus said, then feed my lambs. And again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, take care of my sheep. And the third time he said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him for the third time, do you love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went out where you wanted. But when you're old, you'll stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said that to indicate the kind of death that Peter would have and would glorify God. 3 times Peter denied Jesus. And 3 times Peter said, do you love me? I know you do. He gave Peter a chance to say over each of those denials, Jesus, I love you. Jesus, I love you. Jesus, I love you. And he said with each one, he gave Peter a purpose. He didn't say, well, that's good, but you're done. And at the very end, he even said that one thing that you did at the hardest moment was deny me, you won't do again. In fact, you're actually going to die for me. And for some of us in this church, we know people who've disappointed us. We know people who've hurt us. We know people who've walked away. We've got children, we've got graduates, we've got people that maybe are struggling in their walk with faith. As a church, we can't stop giving up on them because God hasn't counted them out yet. And we need to continue to invite them back into fellowship, back into discipleship, back into walking in their ways with Jesus. We don't just keep people around when they're on their best behavior, but we work with them. We forgive them. And in your own life, maybe you have gotten to this place where you're like, Jesus, I know there was opportunities I could have lived for you, but I didn't, and it just sits with me. It just plays over and over in my head like a tape. Well, every time that tape plays in your head, would you hear Jesus' invitation to say, do you love me? Do you love me? because he knows. And allow him to instill in your faith the forgiveness that he's already provided for you at the cross. And as a church, we'll be a church of grace that opens our arms to other people that make mistakes, that screw up, and say, Jesus isn't done with you yet. Let's pick ourselves up because we got some work to do. Let's be a church that disciples through the 4 boats. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the service. Thank you for our students and our graduates. And Jesus, thank you for the life of Peter, for the window that we get into our lives about what it means to be followers of you and not giving up. Jesus, thank you that the steady presence in all those things wasn't even so much Peter, but it was you with him. Every stage of the way, you invited him further into a walk with you. Would we hear that invitation in our own lives? And would we be a church that continually extends that invitation to others? So that when the day is done, the litmus test of us being a healthy church would be that people would come to know you as a result. And we become more like you together. In Jesus' name, amen.